finds himself not only as captain, but he's number 10 in the US Ryder Cup team standings. The top 6 automatically qualifying will be locked in at the end of this BMW Championship. A couple of the American guys stated their case for the captain to pick himself for the competition at Bethpage Black.
I'll tell you, if I was the captain, I'd pick Keegan. I think he's played great.
Team regardless?
Not regardless. I mean, I think he has a lot of responsibility that week. And so if he feels that he can, play golf like a normal week, given all his other responsibilities, I'm just saying that, if I was the captain and I was thinking, I think he's definitely one of the best American players, and his results have shown that.
Patrick was just in here and he said if he were Keegan Bradley, the captain, he would pick Keegan Bradley, the player. He says he's one of the top 12 guys. What's your thoughts on how he's playing and position?
Yeah, I would pick him too. I think it'd be hard to find really any or many Americans that would argue that point. We'll see. I know he's maybe getting to the area of the 10-11 number on points of where he may think like, is this a spot where I should not pick myself? I feel like a lot of times there's really only like one or two that maybe fluctuate, based off of people that were maybe inside the top 12 on points that maybe don't get picked. Like I said, I don't think you're going to find any or many Americans that are going to argue that he shouldn't be on the team.
And here's a snapshot of Keegan Bradley's season that has put him in this conversation. He won the Travelers Championship in June for his 8th PGA Tour victory, 5 top 10 finishes overall, and 9 top 25, 17 made cuts, 19 starts. That's a lot of consistency. Earlier today, Kira Kay Dixon caught up with the captain out of Caves Valley.
All right, well, Keegan, defending champion, when you think back to what you accomplished at the BMW Championship last year in Denver, what did the win signify to you at the time?
Well, it was such a stressful week the week before, and, getting into the BMW and being in the signature events is such a big deal for us now. And I was so relieved to be there and know I could set my schedule for the following year. Now, following year, we're here again at the BMW Championship. How's the game feeling? How's the body feeling? Feels good. It's crazy that we're already back here, but like I said, getting to this tournament is a big deal for us, and there's a lot at stake these next 2 weeks, and it's right at all of our fingertips. And I know that there's also a lot at stake for the big job that you have as our Ryder Cup captain. All these questions. Will he? Won't he? Yesterday in the media center, we had Patrick Cantlay and Ricky Fowler saying, it's hard to argue with Keegan Bradley being one of the top 12 Americans. What does it mean to you to hear your colleagues say things like that? Really means everything to me. I touched that they would say that, think that. Got a pretty big decision on our hands here. So, sitting here at BMW, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but my goal, whether I was a captain or not, would be to play well these 2 weeks. Sure. And if I do that, who knows? And I also noticed that you spent a lot of time playing practice rounds with guys that might warrant a captain's pick. You spent some time with Andrew Novak, Ben Griffin. The other day you played 9 holes with Patrick Cantlay. What are you looking for when you're playing with these guys in terms of something that might determine your decision for them making the team? Well, like a guy like Ben Griffin and Andrew Novak, they're new to the tour, haven't played a ton with them. Cantlay, we play a lot on off weeks and, practice round yesterday, but I'm just getting to know the guys better, getting to know how they think, their personalities, because when we get into the heat of the Ryder Cup, going to need to know what these guys are like. And so the more time I can spend with them just casually is important. We appreciate you taking the time as always. Good luck this week. I know you're focusing here in the BMW Championship before your focus shifts to the Ryder Cup, but enjoy the week being the defending champion. Thank you.
Now, Keegan Bradley is 12th in the official world golf ranking, only 7 Americans higher than him, 10th in the Ryder Cup standings. There are 3 guys outside of the automatic top 6 qualifiers who are probably going to get picks, and that's Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa and Ben Griffin. Then there's Keegan Bradley. It's the guys after him who actually present an interesting situation. You look at a guy like, say, Maverick McNeely, who seems to have cooled off at the wrong point in the year. Andrew Novak's playing well. Brian Harman has all the grit that you'd want. in a Ryder Cup player in a boisterous atmosphere as well. Cameron Young has been a winner. Patrick Cantley is hitting some form. He was top 10 last week in Memphis and has experience out there. But it does prove that the whole idea of being the captain and a potential pick becomes a very complicated job. And Rory McIlroy was asked about the potential of being a playing captain on the Ryder Cup earlier, and Captain Keegan responded to what Rory said. Let's take a listen.
As you try to figure out kind of new goals, I'm curious, is being a Ryder Cup playing captain something that you aspire to? Is that something?
No, I've been asked to do that, and I've turned it down.
You've already been asked to be the captain?
No, the idea of me being a playing captain sometime soon coming up has come up, and I've shot it down straight away.
Yeah, why?
Because I don't think you can do it.
Could you just elaborate on why you think it would be so difficult to be a playing captain?
I just think the commitments that a captain has the week of, you think about the extra media that a captain has to do, you think about the extra meetings that the captains have to do with the vice captains, with the PGA of America in Keegan's case, preparing your speech for the opening ceremony. Just there's a lot of things that people don't see that the captain does the week of the Ryder Cup, especially now that the Ryder Cup has become so big. If you had said 20 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, I think it was probably possible to do. But with how big of a spectacle and everything that's on the line in a Ryder Cup now, I just think it would be a very difficult position to be in. So I just think for those reasons. And then, the captain isn't going to be on the course all day. So really the captain's only going to be able to play one session on Friday, one session on Saturday. Would you rather not have a player that has the flexibility to go twice if he's playing well? And, there's a lot of different things that go into it. And that's why I think, look, it's just my opinion, but I think it would just be very difficult to do.
There's been a lot of talk, and you brought up these points yourself, but Rory was outlining a case why a guy can't play and captain at the same time in terms of press conferences, speeches, time consuming, and flexibility in terms of how many matches you could play, etc. How much of that have you considered? And is your list longer than that?
I mean, you might be right. We don't know. No one knows. Everybody's telling me to start the year that a player can't be captain and have a good year. And, for me, I feel like this is one of my best years that I've ever had. One of the strangest things what I've done throughout my entire career is really lean on other people for advice and calling people and asking them, how do you prepare for a major? What do you do in the last tee time? Or how do you deal with the media? Or how do you deal with corporate obligations? And in this instance, there's no one to call. So nobody knows how this could work. I certainly have a lot of concerns as well as everybody else, but I have the most incredible vice captains, including Jim Furyk, who's been on like 100 of these teams and been captain a bunch of times. And quite frankly, I'd be leaning on them more than any other captain maybe ever. Anyways, even if I'm not playing. So we're ready for this if it happens. I'm not sure it's going to. I can truly sit here right now and say I don't know what's going to happen. I have to look at myself just like any other player trying to make the team, and I'm 10th in points right now, and that's not 6th.
So many layers to this story, and I feel
Doesn't
like
sound like a guy who wants to step away from the job either.
it does not sound like a guy who wants to step away from the job, and I certainly understand where he's coming from. But this seems like two questions that I could ask you. Will he make himself a pick? Talking about Keegan to be on the Ryder Cup team. The second question is, and this is what I want to address, what Rory just pointed out. Should he? Because Rory makes some really good points about in the modern era, it's going to be really hard for someone to do both effectively.
Well, you shouldn't ask a European, should he? Because if it's a distraction, of course, the Europeans are generally in favour of that. I do think he will make himself a pick. I think he probably has a core consensus of opinion from his team that they want him there, that he's one of the 12 best Americans. You can make that case. The whole should he is another matter entirely, and it's not just related to the idea of does he think he could contribute a point. It's the idea of the distractions. Is it good for the overall value of the team? Because he is going to be limited, I think, in terms of the amount of golf he can play. And if you're picking as a captain, I think you want a guy who could potentially, if he's in form, go 5 matches. And I don't see a scenario in which he could successfully captain as 5 matches under his belt that particular week. It's interesting what the mission is of this Ryder Cup, because when the PGA of America picked him, when Seth Waugh made that call to Keegan Bradley, the PGA of America's mission was to break up the old boys network. We had a revolving door of the same faces all the time as Ryder Cup captains, and they served as each other's vice captains before being promoted. Seth Waugh wanted to demolish that. He seems to have done that. The real test of whether or not that is the case is the captain's picks next week. Do we start to see fresh blood be chosen, or do we see the guys chosen because they're friends with somebody else on the team, and the so-and-so is comfortable playing with this guy, or this guy wants his buddy on the team? That's the real test of whether or not that mission has been successful. Keegan Bradley's mission is winning a Ryder Cup. Now, does he think he can do that by adding points inside the ropes as a playing captain? Probably, but the great unknown is everything outside the ropes. He just said it himself. We don't know how it's going to work, but he could minimize the risk that it doesn't work by not picking himself.
Will he? Yes, I'm with you. I think he will, based largely on what you just pointed out. I think the other players, the players who have already qualified or will qualify for the team, we just heard Ricky Fowler say it. We heard Patrick Cantlay say it. They all know he's
they're
among...
not going to come up and say that he shouldn't pick himself.
Of course not, but you did the metrics in probably a best way. You look at his world golf ranking, I think you said 7th best American. By far, he should be on the team. If you look at data golf, which seems to be where everyone's skewing towards these days with the problem with the world ranking, he is the 10th best American. If you look at his total strokes gained this season on the PGA Tour, he's 9th. By every metric, he should be on that team. Now, he's cooling off at the wrong time, but I do think he is among the top 12 Americans. If that's the starting point, then yes, I'm with you. And what fascinates me here is captains are open to so much criticism already. Yeah. All you need is one thing to go wrong. Corey Pavin is still thinking about the rain gear from that Ryder Cup because of how poorly it went. Yeah. That was such a minute, small thing that the media dug into to criticize that team. Can you imagine the scenario a week after Bethpage, if things don't go the United States way and Keegan plays, what the second guessing will be like?
Can you imagine what it's like if Keegan plays in the first session and doesn't win a point? I mean, the second guessing would start immediately in real time out there. You know, you can make every statistical and performance argument that, yes, Keegan Bradley absolutely is one of the best 12 Americans and would be additive to that team. The problem is Keegan accepted the responsibility of another job that probably has greater impact on the week than he could have as a player. He's replaceable as a player. It's questionable if he's as easily replaceable as a captain, but maybe he thinks he is.
And for a player like Keegan Bradley, who seems to look for advice, he wants some sort of assistance when it comes to figuring out what's next. He's living life in an echo chamber right now. If Tiger Woods is your only point to bounce ideas off of, because he was a playing captain for the President's Cup, even Keegan said it today, that is a vastly different animal. The way the media attention is, the way the build-up is, the way the opening ceremonies are, everything is different at that President's Cup compared to what it's going to be like at Bethpage. He's in a very difficult position.
Hey, Tiger, you doing anything the last week of September? Keegan's got a job for you, perhaps.